All right, we will be recording this webinar for the sake of all of you. If you have any further questions, or we could share this video, as well as for the sake of us. So in our team, we love going over what we do so we could get better and providing more better service to our clients. It's a nonstop education for us and seeing how we could provide value. Awesome. So for those of you who don't know me, welcome. My name is Lorenzo Uribe. I am co-founder of Athena Financial and Associates with my beautiful wife, Annette. And if you're here, you're here because you want to know the dirty. You want to know the secrets, right? What secrets are we going to unveil? Well, we're going to unveil the inheritance secrets. That's pretty much it. So for those of you joining us, Miss Family Avina, okay, Mr. Marco, Family Ayala, thank you. Welcome aboard. I encourage you, like I always do, I have blank sheets of paper and a pen. So whenever I have questions, even though we're presenting, our associates are always coming with a wealth of knowledge, just go ahead and write it down. At the same time, I suggest you write down things that could benefit you, could help you and your family, as well as questions you might have. Don't worry if we're not going to pick on anyone. This is very just informative webinar, very low key, but our goal is to give value. So if you have questions, go ahead and write them down. You could also put them in the chat. We do have an associate checking us on the chat and answering those questions that we can. So this is very interactive, okay? After the webinar. So awesome. First and foremost, thanks again. And let's see. So what about these secrets? Well, these secrets are really very common. We all know the information we're going to hear. It is going to be, for a lot of us, a punch in the gut because it is unsettling, really. It's something that we know we should do, kind of like eating healthy, right? We know we should do it, but yet sometimes that burger, those In-N-Out fries, man, they just taste so good at the same. So when it comes to these conversations that we're going to have, these conversations are vital for our family, are vital for peace of mind within our siblings, and are vital for really longevity. Okay. So without further ado, I want to pass the baton, pass the torch to Miss Stephanie Thomas, who has been really a pioneer in her industry, and she comes with a wealth of knowledge from the banking industry, and comes with a wealth of knowledge as being a mother of two beautiful kids, and still makes time to devote to our clients, right? And still makes time to have some wonderful insight. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to statistics, and really helps a lot of us out. So Miss Stephanie Thomas, go ahead and unmute yourself and share some knowledge to us.
Absolutely. And if we could get the slides up in the meantime, Lorenzo. So like Lorenzo said, it is my honor and privilege to be presenting this evening. Thank you all for joining. Like he mentioned, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm also a financial professional. Prior to serving clients in the financial services industry, though, I was in the military. I was serving as a captain in the United States Air Force as a nuclear officer. So what I tell people is, I was in charge of nuclear weapons and, the nation's most powerful nuclear arsenal. Now it's my duty to make sure that your financial arsenal is in place, one, to empower you and to make better financial decisions and achieve your goals a lot sooner, right? So, and the reason why I say that is because I want you to remind you that you are in good hands, right? All of us have some sort of service within our prior careers or existing careers as far as what it is and what we want to do for our clients. So with that being said, this was one of those topics that, we in conversation through serving our clients decided, hey, it's one of those taboo topics in society that you don't necessarily talk about at barbecues, right? You're not saying, hey, what are you going to do about that will or the trust or the inheritance piece of it, right? And so it's something that is still very obscure, that is still very uncomfortable, and all the more reason why we should be talking about it, right? Next slide, please. So like Lorenzo mentioned, some of these areas may be really unsettling. It may be a punch in the gut, but for the good reasons. We are those people that want to make sure that we are providing that warning prior to, you know, you stumbling upon a bump in the road, right? And so if you're like, Stephanie, my family gets along perfectly, I don't think we're going to have that issue. We'll definitely consider, you know, staying for, we'll talk after the presentation, right? But if you or your family fall into any of these 8 different signs, then more than likely there is some sort of dispute that's going to be brewing in the future. Okay, so one of the first ones is sibling rivalry. If you and your siblings already have a hard time communicating to figure out, you know, who's going to do the next family reunion, or who's going to host Christmas this year, or whatever, then that is also already a key component of you may having a difficult time through the loss of a parent, the loss of a grandparent, right? So why? Because this is sometimes a portion where a lot of siblings say, you know what, I remember how you were when we were younger, and I remember how you didn't protect me, or mom and dad treated me a certain way because of what you did or did not do or failed to do. And so this is almost, it can act as a revengeful way for a sibling to get back at you, right? Is to make sure that you don't get any of those assets, right? And so although we want to ensure peace, right? We want to ensure peace and communication. So one of the things that you can do yourself, if you have, you know, a parent who is aging or a grandparent who is starting to maybe become a little bit, you know, have memory issues or whatnot, is call a family meeting, initiate that family meeting and say, you know what, sister, you know what, brother, mom and dad are getting older. Let's talk about it now. Let's take inventory of all their assets with, you know, their help, and, you know, determine who is going to have, you know, the dad's prized possession, which is the muscle car, right? Or who's going to have mom's wedding ring. Who, that may not be important for me, it may be important for another sibling, right? So kind of understanding and being comfortable with those types of conversations now. As you can see, 30% of individuals, when an inheritance or money issues arise, 30% of individuals don't talk to each other afterwards, right? Because of that dispute. So definitely a key component to a conversation. The next part is the beneficiary. So if you already have siblings who are in different socioeconomic places in their lives, maybe you have an adult sibling or brother who's in college, you know, eating SpaghettiOs or a cup of noodles, right? And is a little bit more frugal because he's in college, versus you already have a sister who's more well established. There's going to be a lot of conflict, especially when it comes to real estate. Real estate causes over 50% of the disputes within a family, because, you know, some siblings may want to say, no, I want to cash flow it. I want to keep it as a rental property. Others may say, no, I want to sell it and kind of improve my own debt and my own financial situation. So you have different pushes and pulls, right? You're being pulled different ways. So one of the areas to be able to help with that is to talk about it now, or whether it's a business, etc. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. Next slide, please. All right, another issue that may be brewing is if you've already have a trust or a will, but you've appointed 2 co-trustees, right? So in this section, what happens oftentimes is that there's too many captains and not enough individuals taking initiative, in a sense. Like there's two captains and not enough followers, rather, right? Maybe they have too much emotional attachment. So oftentimes, if you sit down with an attorney that puts a trust or a will in place, they will tell you appoint a trustee who isn't even a sibling, right? Just to avoid those issues. One, because it's going to take a longer time to execute anything. And then 2, it's just going to make the process even longer. So not only are you grieving emotionally, right? Your loved one just passed, your grandparent or parent. Now you're having to deal with a sibling who doesn't know what they're doing, when they're going to be doing, and they're just dragging their feet, right? Next slide, please. All right, another concern for you as you go through and start thinking through this process is a medical concern. If you have a sibling or a family who is a beneficiary who has a prolonged history of mental illness or substance abuse, they may not be the most reliable person at that time to execute a trust or a will, or even to get part of those assets, right? So this may be a conversation where you set provisions, right? Where you say, you know what, if in order for you to get a certain asset paid out to you, you need to be sober for 1 year. Or perhaps you have a family who only has one child, but that child happens to be a special needs child. Well, that person won't be able to execute it, right? So they need to have certain special needs trusts in place in order for those assets to take care of that adult child with special needs, or even a minor child in that case, right? If you have a parent or grandparent with, kind of having signs of dementia or having memory loss, now is the right time to reach out to them before their memory is completely lost and they're no longer able to make those decisions. All right, so here's another component too, is look out for anyone with undue influence. If you have someone that is, sweethearting their way into your grandparents' life, maybe your grandfather's a widow or a parent, maybe just like an overly friendly person, whether it's a caregiver, a friend who's just all of a sudden reappeared in their lives, just make sure you keep in constant communication with your siblings, right? To make sure that your family members are on the same page as to, like, what is mom and dad doing? What are our grandparents doing? Like, why are they spending all this extravagant money on this person or taking trips with this person, right? One, it's the right thing to do to have an open conversation with them, but then also this acts as a deterrent to that person that's trying to either financially abuse that elderly person, or even, scammers. We hear about them all the time, the robocallers, or the social security letter that individuals get in the mail, right? And a lot of times, unfortunately, older individuals fall for those scams and fraudulent activity. So this is definitely a way that you can deter against that. Now, if you're still on the fence and you're like, no, I'm not gonna have an issue, well, I wanna highlight some prominent celebrity families that, where there was a will, there was a war, whether it's a war with a different individual or even the courts, the government trying to persuade them, like, no, this person did want to leave me this asset, right? You have, Twitch as one of the, most recent ones, and also Priscilla Presley from, Elvis's family. They're all fighting for something. This isn't just a United States issue. This isn't just a state issue. This is an international issue where people every single day die without a will or a trust, right? So we want to make sure that we want to encourage you to have open lines of communication to create a more peaceful transition, and also to remind you, next slide, please. And we also want to remind you that we don't want to, this isn't to say that money makes people ugly, right? I think that if someone is already greedy and someone is already competitive with money, it's just gonna resurface, right, when an inheritance comes into play. But like I said, we are in the interest of our clients. We want to make sure that we do right by them and we give them value as to, hey, when this situation happens, we want to make sure we provide you the warnings so that you are prepared in the future. So with that being said, that concludes my portion. The remainder of our team is now going to actually go in a little bit more of depth as far as, documents to have in place, real estate, property, inheritance, and certain other things. And to kick it off, it's going to be Alejandro Berbera. He's going to be presenting first. He is joining us from Northern California. He has over 20 years of serving the public. He loves what he does. And so go ahead, Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alejandro Berbera. I have over 20 years experience serving the public. Like Stephanie said, this past September 2022, I was reminded of a horrible reality. No one lives forever. A beloved cousin close to my age died unexpectedly. That same week, I myself came close to death. I was fighting an unknown infection, and I became hospitalized. Thankfully, I was saved. 4 days in the hospital opened my eyes. I had nothing prepared, nothing in order in case I died. I didn't have life insurance, just my homemaker wife with no way to pay the mortgage or my final expenses. a horrible burden to lead to the level of my life, I thought. Having this close call scared me and also inspired me. A, I bought a life insurance policy, and B, I joined WFG so I can continue to serve the public. And most of all, I aim to help families prepare for better futures with the help of life insurance, so no one has to suffer those burdens. I have prepared a checklist about what documents to have, health topics, and personal property. A will. Do your parents have a will? Have they outlined, itemized items that they want to spread out with the family? Funeral, did they have anything in place? Did they buy any funeral plots? For example, you don't want to buy one if there's already one there somewhere, tucked away. For example, my dad, he already purchased 3 funeral plots for anyone that needs them, he says. It's good to know if they're available because you don't want to buy them if you already have them. Deeds, do your parents have properties? You need those deeds in order to claim ownership. Pink slips, vehicles they might have, a trailer that they have in storage that you don't know about, boats, RVs, things of the sort. Insurance policies, do they have anything in place, that will take care of, the financial aspects of it. Bank accounts, you don't want to forget that they have money stashed away somewhere. So you want to make that conversation and ask them, what other bank accounts are there besides your savings and your regular checking. Also passwords, you want to find out what the passwords are to that safe they have hidden that they probably didn't tell you about. Businesses, do they have any side businesses going on, employees that they're responsible for? You need to find out that information. Next slide. Health, know which insurance carrier is handling their health. Know the doctors that they have and what they're seeing them for. Hospice plans, do they want to have hospice, or if they come to an elderly age, are they going to live with you? Are you going to put them in a home? If something happens to them and they're in a coma, did they give you instructions of what to do? Are you going to pull the plug, or are you going to make sure they resuscitate to keep them going? What other health insurance do they have that, do they have vision? Do they have dental? Do they have, you got to know what coverage they have for their insurance. Co-payments and deductibles, are they in debt with the hospital? Are they behind on their payments? It's good to know what debts they have with the hospital. Treatments, dialysis, therapy, are they undergoing any dialysis for diabetes, or are they doing therapy on a month-to-month basis or week-to-week basis? Do they anticipate moving into a nursing home, or are they moving in with you or a sibling or aunt and uncle? Topics to know and plan ahead for. Next slide. Personal property. Who's going to get the house? Are they going to donate it to charity? Are they going to split it amongst, their children? Other land or property. Some families have homes in foreign countries, like my uncles have homes in Mexico. We got to find out if they have other homes, like vacation homes, timeshares. Sometimes timeshares are attached to the siblings, whether they know it or not. Vehicles. How many vehicles do they have in their possession, or who's going to get the vehicles? Are they going to be sold or donated even? Family jewels, like Stephanie said, who's going to get grandmother's ring or mom's wedding band, dad's wedding band, or those earrings that were passed down from generation to generation? Any artwork that might be valuable. Furniture, maybe your dad was a carpenter and he built special furniture that he wanted to keep in the family. We got to find out, if those are going to get passed down, or what's going to happen to those. Same goes for tools. Some parents collect tools over the years because they're handy, and tools are worth a lot of money. You can give those, spread those across the family, or are they gonna be sold? Collectibles, some people collect baseball cards, you know, stamp collections, coin collections, things like that. Gotta find out if they have any of those. Family pets, who's gonna inherit the family pet? You would hate to lose a family pet to the pound, you know, it's like a family member. Family heirlooms, grandmother's quilt, you know, my mom's torteadora, who's gonna get that, you know? Clothing, linens, and blankets, you know, sometimes those things are treasured items in the family. And there's other items too that you gotta find out where they're going. Next slide. I'd like to introduce Karen Oribe Figueroa. She's gonna present the next portion of our presentation.
Thank you, Alejandro. Good evening, everybody. First, before I get started, I just want to make sure you guys are able to hear me loud and clear. Perfect, awesome. It's a pleasure to see a lot of beautiful faces this afternoon. Like Alejandro said, my name is Karen Uribe Figueroa. I'm a financial professional in the industry. I've been in the insurance financial industry for over 8 years now. I don't just like what I do. Honestly, I love what I do. Being a mother of 2 beautiful daughters, Olivia and Ariana, they're 5 and 7 years old. They're both in sports, ballet, and soccer. This allows me the flexibility to educate families at my time and my ability of what it is that I love to do, whether it's in English and or Spanish. So Alejandro went ahead and presented the first 3 topics that are very important to focus on when, God forbid, grandparents and or parents pass away. I'm going to touch base on the next 3. But before I do so, I kind of want to paint a picture. Like I said, I have 2 beautiful daughters, which is great. Family is a core value that I appreciate and admire, because for my dad's family, I have 15 uncles and aunts. Now, I can't imagine that being easy for my grandmother that unfortunately passed away over about 15, 20 years ago already. Now, that was huge for my uncles and aunts, because 15 brothers and sisters, if you have 1 or 2 siblings, I know sometimes we butt head personally. I have an older sister and a younger brother, so I can't imagine what those conversations sound like. So I've seen it firsthand, what the responsibilities, what the inheritance, what the debt, what those conversations were having. That the adults were having within, the family, and what conversations weren't being had. If we can go ahead and go on my first slide here, Lorenzo. Thank you. So an aspect that is very important is focusing on the responsibilities. So, for example, my family members, there's 15 brothers and sisters. What responsibilities were taken down by each family member? I know for us personally, there's 9 aunts and 6 uncles. For us, it was distributed evenly among the males, just because that's what they decided to do. Every family is different. Maybe you're the only daughter and you have 3 brothers, or whatever the case may be. Figuring out what responsibilities are going to be taking, who's going to be taking the responsibility of what, and who is going to facilitate any funeral events when it is your grandparent that passes away, your mom or dad that passes it away, your foster parents, your guardians, whoever raised you or whoever you care about. Think about what responsibilities are going to be taking place. Do they have any funds? Who will distribute those funds? Who in that moment is going to be the one taking the lead to make sure everything goes smoothly? What responsibilities, you can go back, sorry. What responsibilities will be given to each sibling? Will it be distributed evenly? A lot of times people think, hey, there's 3 of us, it's going to be distributed evenly, XYZ is going to happen. That's maybe something that you've thought about, but do your siblings know that? Are they in a financially stable position to do so? Now, responsibilities isn't the only thing to look at. It's also inheritance, which is moving on to the next slide here. Is there any inheritance? What does that look like? Once again, who's going to be facilitating that process? Is it going to be one sibling? Maybe there's 4 siblings, but maybe the siblings themselves might not be the one facilitating that. Maybe it might be a third party. Maybe it'd be an uncle, a family member that has been a family friend for over 20, 30 years. Also, where are these inheritance located? are kind of like what Alejandro stated. Is it family situations? Is it assets? Is it personal properties? Is it a stocks? Where are they located? A lot of the times people think, hey, my mom, I know she has money stashed away, or my dad, I know he has money stashed away somewhere. I don't know if it's in stocks. I don't know if it's in real estate. I don't know if it's in XYZ, where it's located. That's okay right now. You don't necessarily need to know exactly where it's at, but just having a basis of, hey, it's there. So that God forbid, when the day comes where you do need to have access to it, you at least have a roadmap of where you're looking for. And then also, once again, who will facilitate that process and what is that process going to look like? And the last important aspect to look at is debt. Now, bringing it back to my personal experience and my family members, I know my grandma didn't have any debt, and that is something that my siblings knew ahead of time. There was inheritance, so my siblings knew how to equally distribute that afterward. Now, people think of different things. Hey, maybe it's the family members that is the least financially stable. Hey, let's help them out with our parents' inheritance. Maybe sometimes it's like, hey, if there's 4 of us, we're going to evenly distribute it. So definitely having that conversation prior is very important, because if you think about it, in that moment of loss, you are going to be focused on grieving, that a lot of the times it's not going to be as easy to have that conversation. So how much debt do your parents have? Do they have any? Have you had that conversation with your parents, with your grandparents, with your guardians? Do you know what that looks like? Will the debt be transferred to all the siblings or just one? Is only one out of your 4 siblings financially capable of paying off that debt? Or is it going to be distributed evenly among the 2, 3, 4 of you guys? Now, especially if you guys are an only child, I would highly recommend to have that conversation with your parents, because maybe they're like, hey, no, Juanito, you don't have to worry about it. Your tia Lupe is going to be taking care of that debt. And you're over here thinking, wow, man, let me get that stress off my shoulders. At least I know that's going to be taken care of. So Alejandro went over the first 3 aspects of the importance of having these conversations with your parents. I will say it is not always the easiest conversations to be had. These are additional 3 topics. Just hopefully I was able to give you guys some pointers of what to look for when you have those conversations, so that the process, because one thing that is guaranteed in life is death. So unfortunately, it is going to happen. We don't want to think about it, but the more prepared we are beforehand, the smoother it is, and the more time you'll have to grieve the loss of your loved ones. With that being said, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Catherine Canizales Reyes. Thank you.
Awesome, Karen. Great job. Thank you so much for passing on the baton. Hi, guys. Good evening. My name is Catherine Yanet Canizales Reyes. Just to go over a little backstory about me. I was actually born in a small country called El Salvador, and then my mom and I decided to move here after the death of my father to chase the American dream. Of course, there were some hardships along the way, but finally I was able to attend college and get my degree in elementary education. During that time, I was a teacher for a couple of years, but during those years when I was a teacher, I realized that there was a lot of backlash, a lot of doubts, and just a lot of negativity within the environment. And honestly, I felt a little lost and unheard for a good while, until actually I was introduced to this business as a financial professional. And for the first time ever, I was actually getting recognized for the work that I do. I'm able to make my own hours. And on top of that, most importantly for me, is I'm finally able to chase my dream. So that's just a little bit about me. Lorenzo, if you can go on to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so as I mentioned before, I actually am Salvadorian. So of course, being Salvadorian, we have the Hispanic mindset where we tend to hide all the money somewhere. My family has told me before that the money has been hidden, ironically, in a sock. Now, imagine if I didn't know that, and when that person did finally pass away, I wouldn't know where to look. Like, I never would have guessed in a million years that it would be hiding somewhere in a sock, hidden somewhere. So, that's the important thing about what we're teaching tonight is just being able to talk to your family members about these kind of issues. So a lot of people think that they'll be able to be ready when that moment does come, that they're going to be mentally prepared to talk about it during that time. But the reality is that not everybody's going to be in a great emotional state of mind. So it's important for us right now. It may not all just happen at once, but it's important to initiate that conversation no matter how difficult it is. So one of the trends that I do tend to notice, at least within my family, and I'm pretty sure it happens with a lot of families too, is that families don't want to talk about a certain topic, especially about death, because they feel uncomfortable. But it is something that, like Karen mentioned, one thing that we can't avoid is death. Like, that's something that's going to happen to everybody, unfortunately, and nobody likes to think about it, but it's also good to be prepared. Like, let's say me, for an example, I'm an only child, and I now have a stepdad, and thankfully, since I decided to do this career, I have been able to educate them on how to be properly prepared for the future. As to back then, they didn't have anything going on for them. And I didn't know anything about what they wanted to do with the funeral. I didn't know what they wanted to do with any of their assets. But since I joined this career, I've been able to talk with my family members in regards to being prepared for those moments. So now, like I said, like Karen said, it may not all be right now all at once, but at least now I know what my mother wants to do for her funeral. I know what my stepdad wants to do with his big monster truck. I know where he wants it to go. It's gonna be me. And now I've also been able to provide them to learn how to actually grow, their portfolio, about how to have their money, how to handle all their assets and all that mumbo jumbo. Okay, so with that was my personal story that I did want to share, but I did also want to share another story that just happened to me recently, where it's about my partner, actually, and it goes to show how life hits you unexpectedly. And my partner recently got hurt, and unfortunately, he had to go into surgery. But it kind of made me open up my eyes a little more on how I absolutely love what I'm doing right now, because it makes me want to make sure that people are educated, because we could have gotten, let's say, a policy that had living benefits, which could have definitely benefited us right now during this hard time. But thankfully, we have a lot of different types of accounts where we're stably okay right now, but it just really goes to show the importance of having these kind of conversations. So of course, that's always going to be my reasoning for wanting to help people and really truly educate them with in this career that I'm doing. So, thank you, Lorenzo, for going on to the next slide. So one of the solutions that we're going to go over is just, how do you show that you love your family? It's honestly really simple. Just show them you love them by having all the things ready for when the worst possible thing happens. Everything's going to be ready and organized. During those moments, the only thing that families want to do, honestly, is just be able to have no anxiety, be able to grieve somebody. During those times when that moment does come, people aren't thinking in the right state of mind. And sometimes emotions can get the best of us. So like I mentioned before, one of the main goals for this presentation is just really to open up our eyes on what needs to be done, how we need to sit down with our family members to be prepared in all the aspects for when it comes to talking about death, so that way everybody has a great peace of mind. And with that being said, I want to introduce to you guys Lorenzo Uribe. He is actually a law enforcement officer, and he has been serving first responder families for the last 5 years. So on to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the presentation, for the information you gave us. And also, I mean, man, so far, a big round of applause for Stephanie, Karen, Alejandro, and Catherine. Great job. So as you can tell, Stephanie, well, let me share a little bit about myself first. This is actually the only slide I have. So tell you what, I'll go ahead and stop that. That way we could all see each other. Great. So as Catherine said, I am a police officer. I have been in law enforcement in the criminal justice field for over 20 years. I've been a sworn officer for a little over approximately actually 18 years, right? And during that time, I was trying to decipher it, but I probably handled approximately 200 death investigations. Unfortunately, where I was present, you know, I was one of the first officers to show up, and 200 is a pretty big number, but I was able to show up first and see how I could render aid or help paramedics that have already shown up, right? And the reality is I could pretty much remember a lot of those cases because, you know, the average public, the community really they don't show up unless it's a family friend or it happened right next door. You really don't see death, right? And what I want to share with you is the death that I have seen, and in the talk of what we're talking right now, the webinar. So I show up, obviously there's chaos, okay? A lot of people go through this very emotional, and believe it or not, some don't. They're very controlled. But one thing I have found is that there's a lot of families out there that I've noticed that when they have everything pre-planned, it's a lot more controlled. It's a lot more peaceful. It's a lot more, they're able to focus more on the emotional process of grief and not the latter, which is emotional process of grief coupled with what do we do now? Coupled with like, oh, where are her medications? Or the coroner is asking for this information. Or what are we going to do with the bills? Or all of a sudden the families come who haven't, and I've been present, I'm there just relaxing, making sure that the person for the crime scene, the coroner has to get there, right? So officer has to stand guard. And we're like a fly in the wall. We have to stand and we just have to watch, make sure no one touches the body, okay? So while that's going on, I've seen chaos. Families that haven't shown up in like 10 years, siblings that haven't shown up in 5 years because of feud. All of a sudden they show up and they're like, well, mom said that this was mine, or this house is mine, you need to get out, get the F out. Like I've seen a lot of that, right? So in reality, like, wow, like as a fly in a wall, like who's to know? How about let's, like, for the majority of us, after you've seen this webinar, I'm sure it hit the gut, like I mentioned in the beginning. I'm sure something happened or someone said something that you're like, wow, like I really don't know who's going to keep the monster truck, well, or la tortilla, who's going to keep the, what you call it, Alejandro? Your mom's
Torqueadora, the tortilla press.
torteadora, yeah, the wooden one that like I would like to keep that in my family, right? So that's all important information, especially if it means something to you, right? And so the secret, what we talked about, in reality, it's not a secret, it's something we all know. However, we want to provide you with the answer, as in like the best time to have these conversations with your parents, not only with your siblings, okay, is now. Because tomorrow's not promised. So we, all of us would like to invite you all to have these conversations with your parents, because it's not just sibling to sibling conversation. The biggest person who's going to say something about this, the mom, is dad, or either, right? So because you want to let them know, you want to ask them, hey, mom and dad, if something is to happen, knock on wood, if something is to happen, what would you like done? Would you like to resuscitate? Okay. If something is to happen, I want to be responsible for X, Y, Z. Pepito could be responsible for, W, X, Y, right? So these are conversations we have to have in order to be more at peace, and also to know that the final wishes are being done, because ultimately a lot of those questions could have been answered in life, right? So this is, like I mentioned, this is a taboo subject. We're trying to make light of it, trying to make fun, but this is a very important topic, and a lot of you might have already gone through something like this, right? So to prevent, for those of you who have children, to prevent your children from going through something like this, open up, have birria, have them over, have some tacos, and just have a conversation. Like, mijos, the reason I have you over is because I want to make sure that, whatever I want, it gets done, or just like I want a peace of mind, right? So that's the reality. And for those of you who have already got your stuff together, well, we all know your primos, primas, cousin, godfathers that might not. So please get with the person who invited you to this webinar, and share with them a name, a number, an email, and we're very professional. We'll go ahead and reach out, or we invite you to say, hey, so-and-so, I just heard this webinar, it made me think of you. Please hit up Catherine. I have her number here. This is it. Or please hit up Karen, Stephanie, Alejandro. I think you should listen to what they have to say or whatnot, right? We're not very salesy. We're more educational. So I was taking notes during the webinar, and I'm just going to share real quick before the Q&A session. And one of the things, a few of the things I picked up on is the key here is to have unity and support. From a common denominator of things that I've heard throughout the presentation is really we want people, we want families to have unity and support, because the reality is how the sibling, your brother and a sister is, how the parent is, their attitude will only be magnified during a death or during this process, right? So to prevent that attitude, let's do it when all heads are cool, and as a parent, let's prevent your children a headache, and as a child, let's make sure that what your parent wanted gets done. Okay. Another thing I saw was preserving family harmony. Okay, that's part of the unity and support. Open conversations can really avoid misunderstanding, right? So like Karen mentioned with finances and her primos and her grandma, we might not know the financial burden that other people might have, but the grandma or the parent might. So who's to say I'm thinking I'm gonna have to pay for the funeral arrangement, when in reality, mom and dad already took care of that, right? So Alejandro mentioned the plot. That's awesome. At the same time, viewers, make sure that plots and all that is taken care of before, because if the prices go skyrocket the moment you're doing things last minute, okay, unfortunately. If you like more information, side note, if you like more information on prices or anything like that, let us know. We give you a lot of that information, no charge, just a value for you. That way you could have a price gauge. The third thing, clear understanding of parents. I mentioned that we want a clear understanding of parents, and planning for contingencies, the what ifs, right? The what if this happens. Now, like I mentioned, any communication between siblings right now, you might grow up, your brother and sister might know your secrets, might know, have cherished memories, but things, and for a parent, if you're thinking, that's not going to happen with my beautiful kids. Well, a lot of us don't share our feelings, don't share our emotions, don't share our thoughts to our siblings and our parents. So if something does happen, who's to say those thoughts come out of the hidden? So we want to prevent that. That's the reality, and just make sure everything continues great. I urge you to reach out if you have any questions or want further information. I urge you to reach out to anyone that invited you to this webinar, and we are really here to help you be of service. So just like one of the reasons I love doing this is because I am, again, like Catherine mentioned, I am in law enforcement, and that when I'm wearing that badge, I am of service to the community. I love it so much of being that type of person that my wife and I started this financial firm, because we saw that there was a void and not only the law enforcement, but our community as well, right? So in order to bridge that gap between our community and the financial education, we're like, hey, Merrill Lynch isn't going knocking on my parents' door saying, hey, you know, like, how could we help you store a financial future? They don't come knocking on doors. Our educational system is broken, like it or not. So we don't talk about finances in school. So we're like, we need our gente, we need our people, our community, those people we love to get this same information that wealthy people pay. So not long story short, that's what we're here to do. If I would like to open it up to some Q&A. Who would like, let's see, I don't want to pick on anyone. So who would like to share something they learned from this webinar? No answer, I will pick on someone. No. Let's see, Mr. Daniel Bayan. He's probably taking notes.
I can share something.
Thank you, Katie.
If from listening, there's this one item of my mom's that everybody knows I get. But now that you guys said this, I'm starting to think maybe I should have her write it in her will or something, because although everybody knows, my sisters, my sister-in-law, that rain lamp goes to me. Who knows? Someone could come in and say, no, I'm taking it. So that kind of makes me think a little bit like, maybe I should start having my mom write things down that are going to go to my siblings and myself.
Are we done?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And it's very true. The reality is that does happen. I kid you not, when I was being that fly in the wall, I saw a lot of that happen, either with cars, or they would just come in and start going through the person's room for jewelry. And then all of a sudden the other siblings like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, mom wanted me to have this. It's like, it hasn't even been 30 minutes and you're going through stuff already. So that's, I suggest you do that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. This was very helpful.
Awesome. Katie, I'll help you out with that, Katie.
Oh, hi, Kat. Hi, honey. Okay.
Awesome. Anyone else? Daniel, Joseph, Chris? Okay. With that being said, thank you for being present. Thank you for listening. And if there's anything any of us could do to help you and put yourself and your family in more peace of mind and better off, please reach out. You know, Catherine, Ms. Canizales Reyes is ready. So is Karen and Stephanie and Alejandro. So we're all ready to help however we can. If we can, and this is a promise from our agency to yours, if we cannot be of service to you, we will point you at the right direction. We have a lot of people we work with reference in everything from taxes to lawyers to attorneys. We refer people to qualified experts in their field at no charge, and we go well recommended. They know the quality of service we provide our clients, and we expect them to have the same. So if we can't be of service, we'll point you at the right direction. At the same time, let us be of service to you. Thank you so much for being present, and we hope you all learned something.
Hey, thanks a lot, Lorenzo. Sorry, my mic was not hooked up, but you guys did an amazing job. Thanks for taking the time to prepare this presentation for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Payan. All right. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.